Joe Adonis was an Italian-American mobster who played a key role in the establishment of the modern Cosa Nostra criminal families in New York City and the National Criminal Syndicate. Adonis rose to become a powerful capo regime inside the Luciano crime family. At the commencement of Prohibition, Luciano, Adonis, Meyer Lansky, and Bugsy Siegel established a bootlegging business in Brooklyn. This enterprise quickly began delivering significant quantities of booze to the show business world on Broadway in Manhattan. Adonis quickly developed the persona of a gentleman bootlegger, associating with the theater elite. In the 1920s, Adonis became an enforcer for Frankie Yale, the boss of some rackets in Brooklyn. While working for Yale, Adonis briefly met future Chicago outfit boss Al Capone, who was also working for Yale. Meanwhile, Luciano became an enforcer for Giuseppe Joe the Boss Masuria. Masuria soon became embroiled in the vicious Castellammarese war with his arch-rival, Salvatore Maranzano. Maranzano represented the Sicilian clans, most of which came from Castellammare del Golfo, Sicily. As the war progressed, both bosses started recruiting more soldiers. By 1930, Adonis had joined the Masuria faction. As the war turned against Masuria, Luciano secretly contacted Maranzano about switching sides. When Masuria heard about Luciano's betrayal, he approached Adonis about killing Luciano. However, Adonis instead warned Luciano about the murder plot. On April 15, 1931, Adonis allegedly participated in Masuria's murder. Luciano had lured Masuria to a meeting at a Coney Island, Brooklyn, restaurant. During the meal, Luciano excused himself to go to the restroom. As soon as Luciano was gone, Adonis, Vito Genovese, Albert Anastasia, and Bugsy Siegel rushed into the dining room and shot Masuria to death. No one was ever indicted in the Masuria murder. With the death of Masuria, the war ended, and Maranzano was the victor. To avoid any future wars, Maranzano reorganized all the Italian-American gangs into the 5 families and anointed himself as Capo di Tutti Capi. Luciano and his loyalists quickly became dissatisfied with Maranzano's power grab. When Luciano discovered that the suspicious Maranzano had ordered his murder, Luciano struck first. On September 10, 1931, several gunmen attacked and killed Maranzano in his Manhattan office. Adonis and Luciano soon controlled bootlegging in Broadway and Midtown Manhattan. At its height, the operation grossed $12 million in 1 year and employed 100 workers. Adonis also bought car dealerships in New Jersey. When customers bought cars from his dealerships, the salesman would intimidate them into buying protection insurance for the vehicle. Adonis soon moved into cigarette distribution, buying up vending machines by the hundreds and stocking them with stolen cigarettes. Adonis ran his criminal empire from Joe's Italian Kitchen, a restaurant that he owned in Brooklyn. By 1932, Adonis was also a major criminal power in Brooklyn. Despite his wealth, Adonis still participated in jewelry robberies, a throwback to his early criminal career on the streets. In 1932, Adonis allegedly participated in the kidnapping and brutal beating in Brooklyn of Isidore Juff and Isaac Wapinski. In 1931, Adonis had lent the 2 men money for investment and kidnapped them in 1932 after deciding that he should be receiving a higher profit. 2 days after the kidnappings, Adonis released Juff and Wapinski after receiving a $5,000 ransom payment. A month later, Wapinski died of internal injuries from being assaulted. Adonis placed many politicians and high-ranking police officers on his payroll. Adonis used his political influence to assist members of the Luciano crime family, such as Luciano and Genovese, and mob associates such as Meyer Lansky and Louis Lepke Buckelter, the head of Murder Incorporated. As a syndicate board member, Adonis, along with Buckelter, may have been responsible for assigning some murder contracts to Murder Inc. In 1936, prosecutors convicted Luciano on pandering charges and sent him to state prison for 30 years. Underboss Vito Genovese remained in charge of the family until he fled to Italy in 1937 to avoid a murder prosecution. Luciano now left Frank Costello, an Adonis ally, in charge of the Luciano family and Adonis in charge of the syndicate. On April 27, 1940, Adonis was indicted in Brooklyn on charges of kidnapping, extortion, and assault in the 1932 Juff Wapinski case. However, on February 24, 1941, the prosecutor requested a dismissal for lack of evidence. In the 1940s, Adonis moved his gambling rackets to New Jersey. New York City Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia's campaign against illegal gambling had made it too difficult to do business in New York. Adonis also moved his family to a luxurious house in Fort Lee, New Jersey. Adonis set up a casino in Lodi, New Jersey, and provided limousine service there from New York City. During the same period, Adonis became partners with Meyer Lansky in an illegal casino in Hallandale Beach, Florida. On February 10, 1946, after being escorted from prison to a ship in Brooklyn Harbor, Luciano was deported to Italy. In December 1946, Adonis and Luciano met at the famous Havana Conference of U.S. organized crime bosses in Cuba. It was Luciano's goal at the conference to regain his mob influence, using Cuba as a base. Being a loyal supporter, Adonis willingly agreed to turn over his power in the syndicate to Luciano. However, the U.S. government soon discovered Luciano's presence in Havana and pressured the Cuban government to expel him. On February 24, 1947, Luciano was placed on a ship by Cuban authorities for deportation back to Italy. On December 12, 1950, Adonis was summoned before the U.S. Senate Kefauver Commission on Organized Crime. Adonis repeatedly refused to testify, citing his right against self-incrimination under the Fifth Amendment to the United States Constitution. Although Adonis escaped contempt charges, he suffered undesirable national exposure as a mobster. In late May 1951, Adonis and several associates pleaded no contest to charges of operating 3 gambling rooms in Lodi, New Jersey, and Fort Lee, New Jersey. On May 28, 1951, Adonis was sentenced in Hackensack, New Jersey, to 2 to 3 years in state prison. On August 6, 1953, at a hearing in Adonis's prison, the U.S. Department of Justice ordered Adonis's deportation to Italy. His wife and children stayed behind in New Jersey. Once in Italy, Adonis moved into a luxurious apartment in the center of Milan. Adonis may have met with Luciano in Naples, but there is no proof of it. Over time, the financially struggling Luciano grew angry at the wealthy Adonis for not helping him. On January 26, 1962, Luciano died of a heart attack in Naples at age 64. Adonis attended the funeral service in Naples, bringing a huge floral wreath with the words, "So long, pal." In June 1971, the Italian government forced Adonis to leave his Milan residence and move to a small town. Adonis was one of 115 suspected mobsters relocated after the assassination in May of Pietro Scaglione, the public prosecutor of Palermo, Sicily. In late November 1971, Italian police forces transported Adonis to a small hillside shack near Ancona, Italy, for interrogation. During the lengthy questioning and some abusive treatment, Adonis suffered a heart attack. He was taken to a regional hospital in Ancona, where he died several days later on November 26, 1971. The U.S. government allowed Adonis's family to bring his body back to the United States for burial. He is buried in Madonna Cemetery in Fort Lee, New Jersey under his family name of Joseph Antonio Dodo.